Today's guest is Mr. Matt Beers. Matt is one of the top gravel cyclists in the world. He is a 3-time Cape Epic winner before turning his attention to the Lifetime Grand Prix Series. Matt is on training camp at the moment with none other than Keegan Swenson in preparation for the biggest gravel race of them all, Unbound. Today we dive into exactly what their training looks like, the volume, the type of intervals, and we attempt to uncover how the very best in the game prepare for the biggest race in gravel. To support this podcast, please check out our sponsors in the description below. And now it's Mr. Matt Beers. Matt Beers, welcome to the Roadman podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I do listen to you, so thanks for reaching out.
No, I'm excited. I want to hear all about how your preparation for Unbound has gone. You in shape? Should I be getting to the bookmakers and putting money on you?
I mean, we've just been done with a block now in Tucson. So been training with Keegan and Russell. And they're two good mates of mine. And I think last week we did like 35 hours. And then this week it's going to be like 30 hours. A few 8-9 hour rides.
It's massive.
Clocking Ks off. Yeah, in the desert. So it's been cool.
What sort of intensity are you riding on those?
I've had a little bit different. I've done some like metabolic work in the beginning of the rides. Obviously through my coach, John, he's prescribed some stuff. And then like obviously intervals as high as you can at the end of the ride. Basically just full gas, 3 minutes or 5 minutes, trying to get used to that fatigue and how to manage that, Maybe don't hit the numbers, but the RPE needs to just be, 10.
That's massive volume though. Like I get a chance to chat with World Tour guys most weeks on the podcast, and not many riders are putting down that volume at World Tour level.
Yeah, I don't normally, like in preparation for Epic, I will do maybe a couple of 30-hour weeks, but 30 plus it gets meaty, but Unbound it's just a beast, 10, it's going to be 10 plus hours, and I more do it to actually figure out how to fuel and how much water you need to consume. It's not really the physical, like, you just got to race 10 hours. I don't think you can be too prepared for that. Just figuring out how to fuel and manage the valleys and the highs and lows when you go through a 9-hour ride. I think it's quite important just to know that you'll be fine.
How's your performance management chart looking at the moment?
I think it's like 150 plus CTL.
That's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. I'm on 50.
Gosh. But my FTP is also not kind to that. So John likes to make my life hard. So it's good.
How fatigued are you at those sort of levels? Like what's your fatigue score? Do you know off the top of your head?
I think I was like close to minus 70. So it's not too bad because you're kind of doing it in 3-day blocks. So we'll do like 2 big days back to back or 3, and then kind of take off like 2 easy days. Otherwise you can't really, or like ramp it slowly, if you know what I mean. So there's a lot of ways to do it, I suppose. But yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. Like, how much thought do you put into getting that training stress balance back towards like maybe not a positive figure, but a lower negative figure as you approach race day? Like, how will you approach that freshening up taper process?
Well, it varies a lot. I've seen, obviously, John knows this better than I do, but like for a race like Cape Epic, you want to come into it, really fresh. Like it actually feels kind of weird because for me personally, just because I'm not used to it, I'm the type of guy that, trains. And John's like, you need to stop or you're going to be in big trouble. And I'm like, I'm sure we can do a little bit more. He loves it. I give him a headache, and but he enjoys it, so it's fine. But yeah, I think just you kind of do everything has to be full. Like glycogen has to be top all the way up. Your body has to be rested like really good for just so you can just empty it for 10 hours.
What are you learning on these kind of 10-hour training rides about fueling? Like you're saying, managing those peaks and valleys. What's the learnings you've taken there so far?
That if you are a little bit behind in the beginning, you're going to go through a pretty bad, like in the middle, it's going to be a rough time. Like I would be doing my metabolic intervals the first 3 hours, and then those middle, 3 hours was like, man, I was like just sitting there, like kind of just like, I don't know how do I even get through this? And then you kind of overfuel almost. And then because you're out there for so long, your body like kind of almost recharges again. The glycogen gets a bit fuller, I suppose that depletion rate becomes a little lower because you've now like just settled into like a zone 2 pace, and then kind of feel good at the end again, hopefully. But I found that around hour 4, you hit the slump, then you get out of it and you actually feel really good. And then like hour 6, another little slump, hour 6, 7. And then after that, I think you're just so screwed. It just, your body doesn't even know, and you don't feel tired anymore. It's weird.
You mentioned what's the specifics of the metabolic intervals you're doing? What's the power? What's the duration on them?
The power it's kind of that. So just before you start producing, obviously a lot of lactic acid, it's kind of like buffering. You want to be in that zone of lactic buffering. So you're kind of using the lactic acid as fuel. I suppose that's kind of what it's targeted as, and shuffling it, I guess. So for power, for me, it's around 4.5. 3.8 to like 4.2 watts per kilo. So yeah, 330 to 350, 60. And you'll do those at, for 45 minutes to an hour, or for 3 hours continuously. And then like a 10-minute, 15-minute really hard at the end. Depends on the session. Yeah, it's hard. Like you're just on it the whole day. And you obviously burn through fuel like you cannot believe. Your body's just, it's that zone where you're just going through carbohydrates like crazy.
That's a rough one to get out of bed and kind of flick onto your training peaks on your phone and go, oh, what have I got in store today? And you're like, oh,
it sucks.
I just want to go back to bed.
I see it way too often, but you just kind of get out the door and just start stomping. And then the quicker you don't have to warm up or anything, you just switch off and just, kind of go. It's nice out here in Arizona because it's just massive, long, straight roads, no traffic lights. So it's pretty ideal.
You mentioned your coach, John, a few times. We're talking about John Wakefield, who we've had on the podcasts, probably by the time this airs, probably a month or so back. John's working with Bora Hansgrove. But one of the tests John talked to me about, which I hadn't previously heard of, was a sub-maximum fatigue test. Are you using that with him?
Yeah, SFT. I've been doing that for a long time. I'm probably the worst guy to ever do that, because even if I'm completely screwed and tired, I'll still try and fake it. But he has caught me out a few times. I'll be like, oh no, I feel good, and then I just can't do my efforts. But yeah, it's a great, like, for Epic and stuff, like monitoring. It's worked really well. And I think you were alluding to, like, you kind of know, like 3 minutes in, you're going to be like, okay, I cannot do I can't do this today. It's, you kind of know immediately, like if you can't hold that pace or you're really having to like rock and roll, you're you're going to be in for a horrible day. So yeah, I think it's really worked over the years,
So
and you can really.
For people that didn't hear that podcast, what's the protocol for it?
So the protocol is it's basically 110 to 100% of your FTP. So for me, it's at 510 for 3 minutes.
God, that's absolutely brutal.
Yeah. So you know pretty quick if you're on a good day or not. It's also like a short warm up, so 10 minutes, and then you just do it on a climb, preferably a climb that or a flat, like, but something that you used to and you kind of know the feeling of. And then after that, you fill out a questionnaire of, have you been sleeping well, like your mood, and pretty much it's pretty good because you can kind of look back and be like, shit, man, I have been not sleeping actually too well. And you think back, and then, you make those adjustments like for the next couple days, week. And then, normally it comes around.
How serious are you on nutrition? And like, have you noticed your nutrition having an impact on that sub-maximum fatigue test?
Yeah, for sure. Like if I'm trying to do silly things like trying to drop some weight or, I'm a big guy. I'm like 6'4", so I'm 81, 82 kilos. So I'm always like fighting the balance of being like on the line. So as soon as let's say I've done a hard session 2 days ago and then I have a SFT to do, immediately if you haven't felt right, because you can just feel empty. You just don't have anything. Your legs are just locked up. And then, but for one of John's colleagues, Mike Postumus, he's nutritionist, also sports scientist, and he helps me with nutrition. So I have all these guys in my corner. So I'm pretty lucky.
It's a nice little ecosystem you're building out for yourself for performance. Let's shift gears slightly away from this training block. How did you find your way into the US gravel scene? Because I think for some of us who are kind of road gravel focused and not so much of an eye on mountain bike, that would have been the first time we seen you was coming into the US gravel scene.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of saw it happening in 2019. I was obviously racing on the mountain bike, and I did a little stint as a stagiaire with UAE in 2019 as well. And realized the road it was brutal, cutthroat. Kind of knew it just wasn't for me, and I kind of missed the boat. I was a bit old and I was on the older side. I think I was like 27 then, 26. Didn't have the experience, and then carried on. Kind of saw this gravel thing happening, and then COVID hit, and I was like, damn, okay, I'm not going to be able to get over to the US for at least another year and a bit. And then once I won the Cape Epic for the first time in 2021, and then from there I got enough sponsors, enough support for me to get over here and do some gravel races and kind of throw my name in the hat. And I did my first one was BWR California 2022, and I came second. And then just kind of been bouncing back and forth here ever since. And then that's about it.
Cape Epic looks like a lot of fun, and I suppose it has that quite unique team element to it, where I think it has mentally a challenge in both directions. If you're the strongest rider or if you're the weakest rider in the team, there's a mental challenge in either direction there. How has it worked out for you in 2021 when you won it? What was that dynamic like in the team?
Yeah, so that was the race was quite strange because it was in October. Normally it's in March, but it all got delayed because of COVID. And I raced with Jordan Saru. He's ex-year world champ. He was the reigning world champ then. And I mean, we got on it's, you have to learn each guy each time. So it is quite a challenge. I've had Jordan. I've won with Jordan. I've won with Christopher Blevins. He's also, world cross country, short track champ. And then I've won with now Howard. So it's a lot of different personalities, different riding styles. But yeah, I think it's part of what makes it so unique. You have to be adaptable and be, level headed. And I've been lucky enough to have some amazing partners. So it's been cool.
Because we've seen that mismatch when Keegan, who you're staying with at the moment, and Lachlan teamed up, and Keegan just made absolute bits of him every day, it looked like, from the highlights.
Yeah, I think it is tricky, especially two guys that haven't done the race, much. Like, I've done the race so many times. I think, what was this year, my 8th or 7th. So I've had like all the bad partners before that. I've not talked to some of my partners for, a couple days, things like that. Not that bad, but like close. But we've always made up, but like I've gone through that whole process, and I kind of, I'm like a veteran of it. I kind of know I'm a bit older when you're younger. So yeah, it's kind of just figuring out through the years.
Yeah, it must be brutal, because in that one, I remember seeing the highlights of the prologue, and Lachlan was already swinging off Keegan's wheel in the prologue. And I was like, oh, look, bro, you are in for a tough week if you're already inside out, 100% effort trying to just hold the wheel in the prologue.
Yeah, it's different. Like, mountain biking's different, especially like Keegan he grew up his whole life racing mountain bikes. And then Lachlan obviously was on the road, came over. He's still at that deficit of, I think, just the bike setup, like just producing power in that position. Like, I know for me, I can produce way more power on my mountain bike. I'm just so, like, that setup is just so natural to me. And the same goes for, I suppose, the road guys. If you had to throw today one of those guys on a mountain bike, they probably they would produce same 7.
I think today would be fine.
Yeah, but it would feel strange to them for sure. So I think that does help.
You mentioned a couple of times that you're 30 now? You're not a younger athlete. It's still weird that we think of 30-year-olds as like old, because it's just a bizarre thing. It's like, I remember quitting soccer at like 17 and thinking I was washed up. Like, oh no, I'm past it. I'm way too old at 17. But how do you think about yourself in terms of your long-term development as an athlete now? Do you have a long-term plan? Like, we're seeing Valverde still pretty competitive in gravel events, at least here in Europe, in his early 40s.
Yeah, I think what might help for me is coming into cycling quite late. I only started racing professionally at around 22, 23. And before that, I did motocross until 19. So I was in a similar situation to you. I was 19. I was like, oh man, I'm old and washed up, go to the next sport. And I think it's kind of helped being, now that I'm 30, I'm only like, under a decade in the sport, where some of these guys have been racing since they were, I don't know, like 8 years old. So to me, I'm still hungry, and I'm still motivated, and I think I'm progressing still, which is quite nice. Figure out nutrition, training, what works, and hopefully have a few till like 35. I think till then, like the Nino Schurters, Valverdes, they're just special breeds of human.
Yeah, definitely. And, career-wise and making a living from it, do you see it as an ecosystem that's going to develop in North America? Do you think you can stay pro within that North American Lifetime Grand Prix ecosystem, or are you going to have to branch out further afield to make a professional living from it?
I think it's in a really good spot right now. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of industry, and where there's hype and there's, attention, there's money. And I think there will be a drop off at some point when this craze is gonna kind of die out. You kind of see it always. The industry is also, it's in a bit of a difficult place at the moment. But yeah, like with World Tour guys coming in and like these other really high end athletes, I think it'll just keep it topped up. I believe, like having Mahoric race Unbound, apparently that's amazing.
And Greg Van Avermaet, I believe.
Yeah, Greg. Those
You
type
know,
of
this
things.
is a funny story. I'm not sure if this one's been out in the media, but I know Chemo a little bit. And Chemo Seymour, who runs Lifetime, and Chemo was telling me someone from his team came to him, was like, "Hey, we got an entry here, like in the lottery. I think this guy could be kind of a big deal." And he's looking at it, it's like Greg Van Avermaet. And it's like one of the questions is like experience and why do you think you should ride Unbound? And he's like, we're on podium in the Olympics, won a few Tour de France stages, think I could fit in well in the event. It's like, all right, I think Greg could be all right.
Mic drop. Drop the mic.
What a legend. He didn't even call anyone and look for a favor. Like he didn't even pick up a phone and try and leverage a sponsor invite into it. He like paid retail into this event.
That's a funny thing with gravel here is that he probably, even if he did reach out, they probably wouldn't really do anything. They would be like, well, enter the lottery and hopefully get in, mate. It's weird. It's a weird situation out here, but it's kind of cool, but they're going to have to start. I think they would have let him in if they had any idea who he is and what he's achieved for cycling.
I think one of the, maybe even a bigger problem than getting in is like the gridding on some of them. Like if you start in some of the events too far back, like if he starts, I don't know, position 200 or something in Leadville on the single track, you're just not moving up. Like there's an impossibility to move up.
Yeah, at Unbound now, last year was the first year they had it. You have like a pro corral, they call it. So like a pro field, which is, I don't know what it's capped at, but like at the moment it's got 150 riders. And to get in there, you kind of have to have some sort of, you need to be a decent rider. So that's quite a nice change because, like you said before, it would just be like, you're there with maybe 1,000+ people and you hope that you got there early.
And that's why Lifetime is such a weird kind of concept. It's weird enough that it's capturing our attention because of the diversity of it. Like you're going to Unbound where you're now doing 10-hour training rides, but later in the year you're going to go to Big Sugar for shorter stuff. Then you're going to have Leadville where you're on, some technical descents. How do you think about distributing your training time between road, gravel, and mountain bike?
Yeah, it is. It's really tricky. Like last year, obviously I did the Lifetime Grand Prix and I kind of just looked at it as like, okay, I'm going to try to do what I can, but more of a like, I need to figure out how the hell do we structure this? How do we manage racing at 3,500 meters for 6 hours, Leadville? Then how do we manage racing Schwamigen for an hour 50 a month later? It's just like, it's madness. So last year I used it as like basically figuring, John and I figure out how the hell do we do this? And we have I think we have a lot better idea of also what races suit me better. So we kind of use that. And I think rest is probably pretty important. You can't just keep a peak for 12 months of the year. It's impossible. Yeah. So you kind of have to sacrifice, be like, okay, I'm not going to be good at this race, but we need to like build through it, for instance.
And even the diversity of riders, because you have like Alex Howes coming into it, Lachlan coming into it, who are coming from World Tour. And like specifically Alex Howes, like I've had Alex on the podcast a bunch of times. He's a dude, I love him. But his whole life has been in this bubble, basically. He was in like the Slipstream development team, which became Garmin, which became Cannondale, which became EF. Like he's been World Tour at that level since the wheel was invented. And then to step out of that into a place where it's like, how do you figure out how to get to races? Like, who's fixing your bike? How do you plan all this stuff? You have to turn into like, a logistics travel planner as well as an athlete. Roadman, I'm going to date myself here, but I've been riding the bike for almost 20 years. And in that time, I've cycled through every cycling apparel brand out there. And I kept swapping out different apparel brands each season until I found LeCol. There's something really different about LeCol, and as soon as you slip into the gear, you notice it feels different, it feels better. I've had the pleasure of chatting with Yanto Barker on the podcast. He's the LeCol founder, and his dedication to crafting the fastest, most refined cycling apparel out there, it's nothing short of inspiring. Yanto isn't just trying to create gear. I get the feeling he's actively and obsessively trying to perfect cycling gear. Trust me, as soon as you slip on the LeCol kit, as soon as you zip up that jersey, you can feel that commitment. The proof for LeCol, it's in the pudding. This is the same kit that Jay Hindley wore when he clinched overall victory in the Giro d'Italia. There's a confidence that comes with wearing apparel that's been battle tested and podium proven in races like the Giro d'Italia. Trust me, feeling good on the bike means you're going to perform better. If you have a second, I highly advise you to jump on over to lecol.cc and check out their amazing range kit and experience this feeling for yourself.
Yeah, I mean, Alex is a great guy, and I find it hard to believe that he was in the World Tour for so long, because like gravel seems like it's his spirit animal. He's just, it just suits his personality so well. And but yeah, like you said, it's crazy. Like for him, it must have been really weird having everything. You just open your phone and there's a spreadsheet of where you need to be, what time. And then now here you're like, oh God, like what airport do I need to fly to? America's like, I think you can drive there, and then it's like freaking 13-hour drive. So you have to fly, rent cars. No, it's a huge undertaking, and it can be pretty overwhelming at times, especially for me, who doesn't really know the US. But yeah, I've had a lot of help from all these guys, and it's really cool that it's like just a big community. You can just message anyone and they'll help you. So it's pretty cool.
And like you're saying, you're staying with Sophia and Keegan at the moment down in Arizona. Will you guys kind of travel as a group, and will you pool resources to get to the races?
Yeah, like Sophia and I are on the specialized off-road team here in America. So it's like a pro gravel team. So along with Howard Grotz, who I raced Epic with. So yeah, we're really lucky. She's like management queen and also like phenomenal rider. So she takes care of me. She just books all my flights and sorts me out, tells me where I need to be. And I'm really grateful for it. Like, I love it. It takes a lot of stress, and she really, I'm very thankful that she's willing to help me so much.
Gravel has given us a new pathway to, quote unquote, making it. Like, as you said, at 27, 28, you go into the World Tour as a stagiaire and you realize you can be strong, but road racing is a lot more than being strong, just the same way mountain biking is a lot more than being strong. There's a totally different skill set, and it can be tough to pick up that skill set unless you're, racing kermesses at 14, 15, 16 years of age. Like, your threshold at over 500 watts. You can have a threshold at 900 watts. And if you're starting some of them Ardennes Classics in P100, you're not moving back to the front of that bike race. Positioning and that ability to hold it is so important. But do you think now that gravel is a viable route for a young kid that wants to make it in cycling and maybe just doesn't have the skill to go the World Tour direction? Not that he doesn't have the skill, but has a different type of skill that's not as suited to World Tour racing.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Like I said, I was strong on the road, but I had no experience of how to race road, not doing kermesses, things like that. And it's not worth a team to teach a 27, 28-year-old. They can pick up a guy who's 20, 19 that can move through a bunch like, from the back to the front in 5 minutes. Whereas me, I'm like stressing, death gripping the bars. This is horrible. And And that's kind of where I found my place. Like I took my mountain bike um, technical skills and what I've learned there, and then also from the road, and then you kind of get this merge of gravel that suits both of that and suits me. And I think for a lot of kids, it can really help. If they're not as confident in the bunch, then maybe gravel's something that you can get away, or it's not as controlled, so you can kind of go for long range attacks and things like that. So I definitely think there's opportunity for it, for sure.
Being a part of the Lifetime Grand Prix Series seems to be the ticket. It's like almost like the validation of I'm in the World Tour, I'm in the Lifetime Grand Prix. Do you think as this ecosystem develops, it needs to be a little bit more transparent for people as to what the requirements are to be a lifetime athlete?
Yeah, I think they're trying to kind of figure that out. Obviously, in the very beginning, it was like more almost like a social media. Like, did you have influence? Like, were you an influencer bike rider? Then it's kind of like narrowed down now to very performance based, but also I don't know how the selecting criteria, because there's some really good riders that don't get selected. I do think they need to, I don't know, like I know Pro Cycling Stats, for instance, is starting to introduce gravel into their algorithm of like you can go on there and see. And I think that's maybe a good place for people at Lifetime to maybe start looking, being like, hey, but yeah.
I guess the challenge is like, yeah, we definitely don't want it as a group of Instagram huns who are, can't ride a bike at all and they're just there for, their social profile. But probably if you swing that one to the very far end, I'm not sure if we want 50 Flemish speakers who just have 7 watts per kilogram threshold, speak very little English and have no interest in doing podcasts, in media, in storytelling. So finding that middle ground maybe is the challenge.
Yeah, 100% correct. Like, I mean, they do really try, like with, doing appearances and like panels and things like that. And you have to be, I think we have to be open to that to try and to help us and help the, the whole thing just not collapse, because the more we can speak about it, it does help us in the long run. So yeah, like you said, it's a fine line of kind of have to be an influencer. You need to have a presence, but also be a good bike rider at the same time. But in saying that, to be someone with presence, you have to get into these races and do well. Yeah. So it's a really tricky scenario.
You almost want to be an influence without the R on the end of it. It's like, I want to be an influence, not an influencer.
Exactly. So it's tricky. But yeah, I think it's getting better each year. So it seems to be whatever they're doing is working.
If you're retired tomorrow and you looked back on your career, what are you proudest of?
Geez, I think everything pretty much. Winning, I think Cape Epic for me 3 times is just crazy. Like when I remember being 10 years old, I think and I saw them coming through my hometown, the Cape Epic, and I was just like in awe, couldn't really believe it. And if you had told me that I'd win this race 3 times, I'd be like, you're absolutely mad. There's no ways. And it's a big deal back home, obviously around the world, it's a pretty big race, but like
it's a big deal everywhere, man. It's one of the only mountain bike races the non-mountain bikers know.
Yeah, and to be a South African and win it, that many times it's very special. And I don't take it for granted 1 minute. So I'd be happy. And then winning BWR California here in America, I've struggled the last few years to just win one of these big gravel races. And then that was nice to just be like, okay, thank God, got that, tick that box,
Will you win Unbound this year? This probably won't go out until after Unbound, so you could say it.
That would be the dream. I mean, that will change. That changes your life pretty as a gravel rider, even as non-gravel. It will change your career quite substantially. So yeah, that's what we're all fighting for. So
what were you, fourth last year?
No, I was in a sprint for, I think it was 8th something. Yeah. But
you know, if you're at the business end of it, like you definitely could win it. Like there's a set, it's not like me going to the race. Like there's no set of circumstances beyond chemo sticking in another muck section that I'm the only man that makes it through the muck section. You know, I'm not going to win it. You're there with, you know, probably one of 10 guys who can win the race. I know it's maybe weighted towards Keegan, as every race seems to be weighted towards Keegan, but you're in the shake-up. Roadman, I've got something exciting to share with you. It's been making a huge difference in my performance of late, especially when it comes to my sleep. Allow me to introduce you to Pillar. We're probably all familiar with the importance of electrolytes and carbohydrates in our race preparation. Pillar is taking a slightly different route. It's focusing on something called micronutrition, ensuring you're ready to perform even before you ever hit the start line. It's all about promoting a good night's sleep, facilitating effective recovery, and replenishing those crucial micronutrients so you can perform your best. Over the past month, I've been running a little experiment. I've been incorporating Pillar's triple magnesium supplement into my routine. I take it 30 minutes before bed every night, and I've seen a remarkable improvement in my sleep quality and my HRV. I'm tracking this every single night using my Whoop, and the results are there in black and white. I wake up feeling refreshed, having had a deep restorative sleep, and I'm ready to take on work, take on training, or whatever life throws at me the next day. But I want you to do something. Don't take my word for this. Let the data from your fitness tracker tell you the story. If you're ready to elevate your performance and elevate your sleep quality like me, why not give Pillar a try? Head on over to pillarperformance.shop and use the code ROADMAN on your local website to get 15% off your first order. If you're listening in the US, you can head on over to thefeed.com/Pillar and use the code ROADMAN for the same 15% off your first order.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know I have the ability to do it. Obviously, there's a lot of scenarios and circumstances, but like I think we've eliminated a lot of those. So now we just got to put in the work. We've done everything. Keegan and I are really good friends, so that's a really unique scenario, I think, in the sport as well. You know, Keegan and I don't really hide anything from each other. We go out there and the best man wins. He knows. So it's I kind of like that. To me, that's cool.
Feels like Rocky versus Apollo in Rocky 4. They're kind of just knocking shit out of each other.
Yeah, pretty much be like that. But there's some strong European guys, you know. They also beasts. So I think we'll have a handful this year for sure.
Yeah, I wonder, like, there's obviously like legends of sport, like Lawrence Tendam's roll the top 10 in the Tour de France. It doesn't seem like his full focus is on gravel. Like he's, you know, he likes drinking beers. He's a family man, building brands. But I also think there's such an edge you guys have from, this is what I do. My full-time focus is preparing for this gravel race in terms of figuring out, I know everyone's obsessed with tire widths and tire pressures, but you actually get time to test this stuff when they're probably just mimicking what you guys are doing rather than actually individually running tests for themselves on it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's definitely something I've noticed with Keegan. His attention to detail and like how much he puts into each race individually, like testing tires, having the fastest setup, you know, or tiny, just every little detail's I've been like, whoa, okay, that's quite different. As opposed to like Lawrence, who's just gets there and he still does freaking unbelievably. But sometimes, you know, it's weird. Sometimes being full focus is at your detriment as well. Like him coming in, he's like, whatever, I'm just going to rip it and I don't care. Also sometimes helps. to not be so A-type.
Yeah, definitely pressure off. Any tech insights you can give us for what you're planning to run for Unbound tires? Are you sponsored on tires? Because you can always disregard the recommendations when someone's sponsored. They're like, "Yeah, the best tires in the world are. Insert my sponsor."
Yeah, I mean, we obviously being with Specialized, you kind of have that whole ecosystem of tires, wheels, handlebars, saddles. We do have some special super tough tires this year because the North, we went south last year, but the North course has been very famously very, very rough and chunky and just like gnarly. So we've been lucky enough that Specialized have done that. Made some beefy.
They do make a kick-ass tire as well. Like I've been running the 47 Pathfinders on my gravel bike, and I love them.
Exactly. So we do have very good selection, and it's going to be a toss-up between 47 and 42, depending on the mud. I guess if it's muddy again, you have to go skinnier just so you have the clearance. So we just kind of have all the scenarios planned, and we have crazy support from Specialized for that race. So I'm very lucky for sure.
Is there any way you can mitigate the damage in the mud? Like I've heard of people applying different lotions onto their frames so the muck isn't sticking as much. And have you got a strategy on that?
God, I tell you, it is like last year when I hit it, I was like, what is even happening? How, like, I've never ridden in mud that can do that. Like it just cakes so bad. Doesn't matter what silicone you put on your frame, anything. It's just your bike becomes like 20 kilos and nothing moves. It just seizes. And a paint stick from Walmart is your best, like most high performance tool at that point. Literally a paint stick. That is the most high performance tool in that moment.
I love it.
No, it's just a shit show.
Matt, best of luck at Unbound, and thanks very much for taking the time to chat.
Thank you.
So if you like this video, you should definitely check out this video because I know you're going to love it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel.